Hello, and welcome to Living Proof, the Isaac Newton Institute podcast. My name is Dan Aspel, and I'm the Communications Manager here at I&I. My guest today is Professor Anotida Madzvamuse of the University of Sussex. Professor Madzvamuse not only has some very interesting things to say about his specialism in mathematical and computational biology, but also has a truly astonishing backstory to tell about how he came to be where he is today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. So, Anotida Madzvamuse, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here. Welcome to Living Proof.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you. Really a pleasure to be here.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. It's a pleasure to have you. And the reason why we're speaking to you is manifold, really, because you took part in the filming of a film last month at I&I, and we're very thankful to you. And that film is a sort of new bannerhead movie about the I&I. It's going to be about 5 or 6 minutes long. It's going to introduce people to the Institute, and you were one of a very small group of interviewees talking about your experience there. So it was wonderful to see you at I&I again, and whilst you were here, you and I spoke a little bit just off camera, and I thought it was also interesting that I really wanted to get you on the podcast, so welcome. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself today, for anyone that's not met you before? Tell us about your position at your home institution and what you specialise in, and generally what you do in your professional life.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan, for the invitation. My name is Anotida Madzvamuse. I'm a professor of mathematics, in particular of mathematical and computational biology at the University of Sussex. So my research, I've been in Sussex since 2006, so quite a long time ago now. So I built a research group in the area of applied mathematics, which is mathematical and computational biology. I'm looking at my primary research is on pattern formation, like how patterns form in nature, following the work of Alan Turing, for example, how patterns form in nature. The other part is on understanding cell migration, single cell migration, how single cells migrate, how they move in complex environments in tissue or in the blood, in the bone, for example, or in the brain. These are examples of where single cells play an important role, or in wound healing. If you cut yourself, after a period of time, the wound heals, but it's being aided by cells, white blood cells, which neutrophil cells, in fact, which help you to repair those wounds. So cancer biology is one of the areas where single cells also play an important role. And so I'm looking at understanding really the physics of cells, what drives single cells to migrate in the way they do, and how do they make those decisions. They don't have they have their own brain, their own mechanism of identifying what is the front, what is the back, how they turn around. If you give them food, some sauce, they can turn around, they can move around in complex environment. But they have a mechanism, and we're trying to understand those mechanisms based on experimental observations, but from a mathematical point of view. So that's my area.
And that takes up most of your research time and your specialism during your role at Sussex.
That's right. At the moment, that's taking a big bulk of my time. But also, I've tried to cover the work on COVID. So I have a toolkit that's also coming up online, Halogen. If you check it, it's Halogen, and it helps local authorities, city councils to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on their health capacity in terms of number of people in hospital or the number of people who are being released from hospitals, as well as those who are dying in mortuaries and burial homes. They want to understand if they have enough capacity. And so we have developed a COVID modeling, which is driven by local data sets as opposed to national data sets. So that's something that we have been working on very hard for the last year or so.
Yeah, and I'm sure people can find information about that via the University of Sussex, who will have
that's correct.
put out a press release about it.
We just had a press release about it, exactly.
Yeah, and is Halogen a clever acronym, or is it just a good name?
It took us a while to find the acronym. So it was a search and search. We searched for acronyms. It was very difficult, but halogen is it's a light. It's a shining light to some extent. So we wanted to, rather than mourn about COVID, but to give a positive feeling about COVID. In terms of giving the local authorities the power to understand, to plan ahead in some sense. Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. It'll be really satisfying, I'm sure, to see the positive outcomes that result from that. Fingers crossed. So yes, it's really interesting to hear about that. And obviously, since 2006, I think you said you've been living in Sussex. It's a pleasant part of the country to be in. Have you enjoyed your life outside of your professional work, living in the south of England?
It's a beautiful region. I love the region for camping, for biking. To the sea, you can go swimming. It's also well connected in terms of research collaborations with universities around. With London, it's just an hour's drive on the train, ride on the train. So it's very well connected. I like it. It's quiet as well. You can be in a big city, but you can also be in a few minutes out in the country. So I grew up in the country. I'm a countryman, and so I relate to it very, very much so.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I want to sort of walk backwards the steps of your life back to that original country life that you just mentioned. But before I do, the mathematical biology side of your research, am I right in saying that ties to some time that you spent at INI, which is one of the reasons why we featured you as an interview guest on this new film?
Absolutely. So the INI has played a pivotal role in my research, in particular in my research area. In 2015, I organized with other people, Hans Ottmar, Rudolf Meckel, also Rudolf Leube in Germany. Both of them are in Germany. Hans is in Minnesota in the US. So we organized this 6-month program on coupling geometric PDs with cell motility and pattern formation. So it was really in my area, but it brought so much to my research in terms of collaborations, in terms of seeing the challenges that are there from an experimental point of view. We even moved to Germany. We shipped 2 buses of people to Germany for 2 weeks to do experiments, just to understand what drives single cell migration as well as collective cell migration and so on. So that was it. I think the INI played an important role in my research, and I continue to be associated with it. I encourage young people. I have known the INI for quite some time, and it's a remarkable place for collaborating, developing these collaborations. So I will encourage anyone, young people, young early careers, to engage with the programs and so. Yeah.
That's very exciting to hear, particularly about shipping people out to where the experimentation was happening in Germany. It's a rare trip away from the blackboard.
That's right. It was amazing to see mathematicians working with pipette, doing experimental manipulations, but very difficult.
Okay, well, I'll have to press you for some amusing anecdotes about that period at some point. So I've asked about your position now, which is extremely exciting, and we've established your connection with INI, which equally is very inspiring. And we mentioned that your life in the country in Sussex is a happy one outside of work, which is wonderful to hear. And Sussex happens to be a part of the country that I know quite well, so I can see why one would be so fond of it. But let's step backwards, because I think there's a really interesting story to be told here. So prior to 2006, before you arrived at the University of Sussex, before you were appointed there, what was your professional story and your life story? If we step back one period at a time, how did you come to be there?
So it's a long trajectory. It's a very long journey. I was born and bred in Zimbabwe. I'm a Zimbabwean by origin, and so I grew up in a very rural area, close to Gweru in the Midlands. They call it the Midlands in Shishavani. So as I said, I've spoken to you about this. The first time I was in the city was when I was almost 14 years old, and it was just by chance that I had a wound on my tummy, and they took me to hospital. But that was the first time, and growing up in the country, I love the country, but also there was also among our generation there was that need, I think, to try to learn, to go to the good schools. So I went to a boarding school, Pakame Secondary School, and it was I think one of the best decisions I have ever made, or my parents have ever made, to send me there. But it was very challenging. But yeah, that's my background. And then I left secondary I became a teacher, a temporary teacher, because during those years in the mid 80s, it was difficult to find jobs per se. Luckily, I found a scholarship that allowed me to have a joint program between Zimbabwe and Cuba. So I went to Cuba for 5 years to do mathematics under the Zimbabwe-Cuba collaboration. That was also very nice. I managed to learn Spanish, but I also learned quite a lot of pure mathematics. So my background was mainly in pure maths. I left Cuba to go back to Zimbabwe. I joined Chaplin High School as a A-level mathematics teacher. I taught there for a few years. I think that was from 91 to 94. And I realized, there was much more to teaching than maybe that I could do besides teaching. So I applied to go to the University of Zimbabwe to do another 1 year honors, and that worked out quite well in some sense. I was lucky that my scholarship, my job was not terminated, so I could earn my salary while I was doing the studies full time. So it was a 1 year full time, and I graduated as the top student in that year, and I had a book prize. At the end of the year, one of the insurance companies who are dealing with group insurance, annuities and so on, the Old Mutual, I think it was, they recruited us for two of us just by they just came to the department and said, we have heard about you guys. We want you to work with us. And for a year, I joined the life insurance company. I worked there for a year. It was very challenging because every day you have to go into a very old antique, full of papers, full of documents with dust on them. Lots of dust. You have to open and see what the application forms were, maybe from 5 years or 10 years ago. They were all stuck, and you have to compute the interest rates of all these, enter them on the machine but manually. And I was sitting there one day and just said, no, you know what, this is not for me. So after 1 year, I attended my resignation, and I applied for a scholarship to Oxford, and I went to Oxford to do my master's and PhD. I was also lucky to be supported by the government as well, the government of Zimbabwe, to do that master's and my PhD. So I went to Oxford in 1996. I did a master's 96 to 97, and a PhD from 97 to 2000, 3 years. And after that, I did a postdoc with my two advisors, Andy Watson and Philip Miney in Oxford. 3 years of postdoc. I realized, okay, maybe it's the end of, I need to find something. I'd never been to the US. I only flew through San Francisco once, and I was fascinated by the US as a country. Our head of department in numerical analysis, Nick Trefethan, is American, and he was speaking so highly about the US. So I thought, why not try America? So I got a tenure track position in Auburn University in Alabama, in the South.
Did your history with Cuba present any difficulties there?
Not at all.
Oh, that's a relief.
Yeah. No. There was no. Probably because the passports change over a year, so your passport goes out of circulation. So there was even if I filled it, there was no problem at all. Mm-hmm. I knew of other people who had gone much recently to Cuba and who were in the US, so it was not a problem.
Sure. So yes, you were in Alabama.
So I was in Alabama for 3 years on a tenure track position, but again, I felt very isolated as a mathematician. There were not so many people working in my area. I tried to form groups, but it was difficult. And I applied. I was almost going to go to San Diego. I had an offer there, and it was San Diego, Sussex. Then I said, okay, but it's better if I go to Sussex. So I think it has been a very, very good decision. I joined a research group. First of all, it was the main person was Charles Elliott, who is now at Warwick. So he was working on geometric PDs. And this is something that I really wanted to learn. And I've been able to sort of get into the area and develop my own niche within that area of geometric PDs and their applications to cell motility. So
that's a really incredible journey, and so much travel and success along the way. I'm sure there was more challenge than it sounds like at various stages. But to go back to the beginning of that story, because I thought that was really fascinating. So for someone like myself who grew up in a place not dissimilar at all to where you live now, can you help me understand what the rural village that you grew up in Zimbabwe was like in comparison?
Well, I go biking every day in Sussex, and I admire the beautiful farms, the infrastructure that there is. It's really a dream come true. Where I grew up, it's very rural. It's really rural. It's river, lots of rivers around. So there's no running water, for example. We have to nowadays there are boreholes, but during my time there were no boreholes. So you drink water from the river. We have to go and collect water from the river. We also had as peasantry farmers, we had to farm. So in order to get food, you had to wake up 2 a.m. in the morning, do your farming, finish by 6, change, shower, whatever in the river, and walk to school. And after school, you had to go and collect the kettles, whatever, from the farms and bring them in, and do your chores. So you were in bed probably by 9, very late, and this was almost on a daily basis. So very exciting. I still have very fond memories. I wish I could visit there more often, but it's not possible because of my job, also because of maybe who I am. But I find it very, very therapeutic, very nice. You had the world to yourself. You could travel anywhere, miles and miles out in the wilderness, and be yourself and rely on nature, really, basically.
Yeah, that sounds from a country which is as developed as Southern England, particularly. That sounds very appealing.
Absolutely. So when I was growing up, we could collect fruits, we could collect honey, for example, without any gear for collecting honey. You'll be beaten, everywhere, stung by bees. But we would collect them. We would collect mushrooms, for example, very nice mushrooms, lots of fish. We also could go fishing. This was also something that was very nice. River fish, lots of fish we could get. So it was very nice. Apart from hunting, because we were also hunting for wildlife as part of our main sort of meat. So lots. It was an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you remember it fondly, but it also sounds like a lot of work. I mean, joyful in retrospect, I guess.
Absolutely.
But I'm guessing that when you're not as energetic as a school child, it can quickly get on top of you. That responsibility. Yeah. Absolutely,
and also to get out of it. I think one of the challenges is to move out of that sort of lifestyle. It's quite difficult. I know. When I go back, I see lots of my old, friends, and they are all still there, and they are all doing still the same things. But they their world is very. I've been lucky to travel around the world to see other places, and this is something that I wish they could get exposed, because when I talk to them, I'm on the flight for 12 hours from one place. They don't understand what it means. Where are you going? And what does it mean? So all this, they read books. It's through reading books maybe, or TV. Nowadays there's TV, but even the rural areas, it's very difficult for them to get TV. So
and it must be
a difficult lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, from comparing with my own family background, let's say, it's difficult enough to explain to a family in Sussex that you work in the mathematical sciences. So to your family, friends back where in the village you grew up in, it must be very difficult to explain what a career in mathematics means and involves. Am I right, do you think?
It is very difficult. Even to my parents, it's very difficult to explain what my job is, what I do. The best I can relate to is their teachers. So it's more or less, at a higher level. But in terms of research, it's very difficult for them to understand that I'm formulating new mathematics.
Mm.
What kind of mathematics, they would not have any idea of what kind of mathematics, if I have to describe them in some sense, like I'm doing cancer biology or something like that. But it's very research, even in Zimbabwe, it's only done in very specialized places, the universities, which are a couple of them, and we don't have research institutes, for example, in mathematics. We don't. It would be nice to have these. So it's something that's really sort of alien to many people. Yeah,
exactly. And I feel that's quite universal. It's not strictly related to rural Zimbabwe, but the contrast perhaps seems even greater, I think, because of the infrastructure, just the different. That's the most apparent thing, is that it's unthinkable for anyone in again, to use the example of southern England, to forage and to hunt for food. It's something which is a sort of an eccentric hobby almost, as opposed to a lifestyle necessity. So I guess the most interesting thing that leaps out of that is that with your obligations, helping your family farm, for example, it's amazing that you had the time and the energy to discover mathematics, and not only to discover it, but to realize that you were exceptionally good at it.
Yes. Well, I don't know how to put it, but the only thing I could do was mathematics. I remember, as I said, I won the book prize in the UZ. I was the best student. When I was in high school, we used. I mean, it was a fierce competitive environment to in terms of studies. So every term there was a ranking. At the end of the term, there was a ranking of the first student in the year, the second student. They were ranked up to the last student. If you are 300 of you, you will be ranked up to number 300. And I was always in the top 5. I don't want to sound too much about, but I was always in the top 5. I could be number 1 sometimes, number 2, number 3, but I was always in the top 5. But my best score in all of these was because of mathematics. In some sense, people could not really do that well in mathematics, and I'll catch up in other subjects. I was almost average. And when the grades came at the end of the school, so they will announce them. I don't know here in the UK. I haven't been to a high school in the UK to see how they do it, but they the whole school is there, and they announce the grades. Your A level, all your grades, and when they came out, all the rest of the students had their grades very good, A's here, A's there, but none of them had an A in mathematics except myself. So this was absolute. That's when I realized at that time that, oh my goodness, this is it. This is the only thing I can do. And I was competing against some of the most talented. As I said, I was in the top 5, but they were very good students. We were in the first number 1 for 2 terms maybe, or something like that. But they could not get an A in mathematics as much as. So I realized then that the only thing I could do was mathematics. And also, I told you, I grew up in a rural area. My parents had no money. My father had no money. My mom had no penny whatsoever. And so I did 2 things. I stayed in school over the holidays to work on building constructions. And from there, they will give me some pocket money, but also they will cancel my fees. So they will just wipe out my fees. Rather than giving me money for whatever, they will just say, okay, your fees is paid. So I will stay in. Whenever I had the opportunity to go and visit my brother, he was in Harare, in the capital, I will I will go and team up with people who are shoe polishing. It's a famous business in Harare where you go and polish. So I will join them and polish shoes, probably for the wealthy people. They want their shoes to be polished. You polish them and you charge them, and they'll give me some pocket money in the end. So that was the money I could get and use as pocket money when I was in school. So because I could not, my mom had not, even now, I have to support them. I have to support them with money. They don't have money. So this was the problem. But yeah, I could only see that I could get into a better job by being academically better than I was. So I tried to find a better life through studies.
It's an amazing story to hear, and there were a few questions I had based on that. So the first was, I guess you can thank the discovery of your mathematical talent to what sounds like a really intensive schooling system. And two questions from that. One is this the boarding school which you described earlier? So you would move away.
It is the Pakame, yes, the Pakame boarding school. Yes.
So you moved away and even stayed in the holidays. So you were separated from your family fully whilst working and studying. And at what age did all this occur?
I joined them at 12. At 12. So when I finished, I was I think 18. Yeah.
And during that period, did your family visit you? Did you have opportunities to go home?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. I do not remember ever even my mom being at my school. I don't think so. I had other relatives who would come with me. I'll not come with me. The opposite. I will go with them. I'll tag along and be with them. So they were much sort of not wealthy, but they were better off. They had a car, for example, and sometimes I'll jump on and rather than taking a bus, and they will drive me to school. But they were my uncles. But yeah. My father, the first time he went to my school, we walked because we were about 60 kilometers from the school. So we walked from home to school to collect my grades. When he heard about my grades, he was so happy, and he walked with me all the way to collect them and work back again. So there was no transport. We didn't have money for the bus. So we walked and collect them. Right? Yeah.
So 60k each way, was that at the very least a day's journey, 2 days each way?
It was a full day. So you go in the morning and you come back in the evening.
That's astonishing. So you walked 120 kilometers.
We used to walk much. Yeah.
Wow.
We could walk for miles and miles. I can. Yeah.
I mean that's mind blowing in itself, and I think it's astonishing and impressive and kind of sad in a way that at age 12 you were studying and working so intensely when in this country, for example, it's kind of accepted now that adolescence bleeds into the 20s psychologically. You can be in your mid-20s and still considered the psychological adolescent, but at less than half that age you were supporting your family, you were a working man, age 12.
Yeah, I not only, I think I was working even before that. When I was in primary, as I said, we worked. We if you needed to leave to be able to have food on your table, whether it's vegetables, tomatoes, whatever, you had to do gardening, and we had to do it at a very young age, and that was even before I was 12. I learned to cook before I was 12. I cook very well. I cook every day, and so I learned. Yeah.
And I know from our previous conversations that in your life now you have a family and you have children, and I imagine your children's lives are very different. And how does that? I mean, does it give you a lot of joy that it's very different? Do you if ever they complain about anything, do you do the typical dad thing of saying, "Well, back in my day, it was much harder than this," or do you try and hold back on that kind of conversation?
That's another very good question. This is it's really difficult to sort of get the balance. I have a wonderful family. My wife is Turkish, so she's Suna. She's Turkish. and we have two daughters, Mona and Layla. And the good thing is I'm lucky that Suna her specialty is on child development. So she specializes on human development, in particular children. And so she can sort of tone down my sort of because I feel that children should really be sufficient. They should do things a lot by themselves, and sometimes maybe I demand too much. But it's a different world. I mean, we drive. Sometimes I drive them to school, and so on. But I see that sometimes it's not necessary. It's really not necessary to drive just a few streets down the road to go to school. You literally, I could walk. I mean, we could walk for miles to go to school. In the same context, I think they should be able to do this. So they bike. My children now, one is 4, one is 10. We have bicycles, so we bike a lot rather than walking. We walk a lot, but also we do lots of bicycling, and that's very healthy, I think. Also, I teach them to be, to do things by themselves in the house. I think it's important to acquire those skills quite early. If you don't, then when you go to university, you drive your classmates or your roommates crazy if you don't wash your dishes, for example, or you don't tidy up. You leave them everywhere. This is not good. So I don't know. It's a different lifestyle. I try to take my daughters to Zimbabwe whenever I can, and I show them where I grew up. They really cannot understand how I could live under those conditions. Because if I take them right now to live there for a week and do the same things I could do, even 10% of what I could do, it's very difficult for them to be able to. So. Yeah,
I can imagine. It sort of speaks to your character that you can teach them these lessons in a sort of very passive and positive way. And when you speak about your past, it's always very positively as well. I mean, your memories of your childhood were very happy ones, for the ones that you shared earlier, despite
absolutely.
Despite the hardships, I guess.
I enjoyed it. For me, it was the best. It was the best life I could have as a young. I played squash with 6 or 7 other English sort of retired. They are retirees, most of them, in their 65s, 70s. So I joined them 15 years ago, and I tell them about my upbringing, and they find it also quite fascinating. But I think it's the best time. It was for me. I could not have swapped it for anything. I loved it. I loved being. I still, as I said, I go there and I go into the country. Really, being out there, it's nice.
And by my count, moving on to sort of the rest of the story which you told about your career, by my count, you have at the very least 3 languages that you can call on. So I don't know if it's a national language in Zimbabwe or if it was a regional one where you grew up.
So I speak Shona. That's my main one. There's Ndebele, which is in the sort of Matabeleland, Buluwel region. So these are the main 2 languages. English is mandatory for everyone. So when I was growing up, English was the national language, if you want to say. But the government in 1980, they introduced both Ndebele and Shona as compulsory languages for all schools in order to help harmonize, if you want, the country. Also, I think it's a very good thing that you can speak, you can understand, speak the same language, even if you speak multiple languages. I think it's very good.
So those three came to you. You had all 3 of those at your call throughout your education.
Not in Ndebele. I can hear some. I can speak some, but not fluent. I'm not fluent at all. During my time, the government did not introduce, because they came into power in 1980, and that's when I went to secondary school, and so it took them a couple of years before they made it mandatory for everyone. But I have friends who speak Ndebele, and I could speak to them well, they will teach me some, but this was just me just picking up really from friends,
Yeah, and then that experience in picking up languages, which is very important, and be able to understand the structure of language helps a great deal. And then, of course, Cuba, you lived there, you learned to speak, I imagine, a very good level of Spanish, if not fluent.
Yeah. Un poco hablar. So I speak, very, not so much. When I was there, I was really fluent. But it's the exposure, I think. If anyone, you're speaking about my children. I'm sending my children. One of them is doing Spanish. She's 4 years old now. She's doing Spanish, and the other one is doing French, because we travel in Europe quite a lot, and we go skiing in France, and we travel in Spain as well. So I think for me, it's good to learn as many languages as you can. I wish I could speak Italian or French. I'm not very good at French, and I would love to.
Oh, well, once you've got one Romance language, the rest just fall easily, right? I'm sure that Italian and French will come to you quickly.
Yeah, so I can hear if an Italian speaks not so fast, I can hear some of the words. Similarly for French, because my Spanish is not that bad. It's very good, I would say. But I haven't spoken for some time because we all use English. I also learned Turkish because of my wife. So I took an intensive training one summer in Istanbul, and that has helped me quite a lot as well.
Wow, that's fascinating. I think the ability to understand so many different languages and to see the methods of expression is so insightful. From the very little that I can't boast nearly as much of being a polyglot as you are, but I have a little understanding of language, and the way that it can teach you about how people express themselves and the way that certain languages can express some things better than others is a wonderful thing to be able to understand.
I absolutely, you're absolutely right. I personally, and this is my personal view, is the world is my home. Wherever I am, that's where my home is, and so I don't feel. Yes, I feel nostalgic about my upbringing and so on, but I am happy traveling around, meeting new people, talking. I love that. It's part of my. I think my personality to some extent. I like to meet people. I like to develop friends and so on. So I've been fortunate enough with this job to travel around the world from almost all continents of the world. And meet people, different people, speak different languages, and so on.
Well, Anotida, I'm very sorry to say that I'm coming near the end of the time which I've allotted to speak to you, and I genuinely could speak to you all day because I think this is really, really interesting. But can I end with one more quite large question, actually, which is, in your time in academia, your time travelling and working in Zimbabwe and then Cuba and the States and the UK, how many people from a similarly rural Zimbabwean or more broadly African background have you met in positions such as yours or within mathematics as a discipline? And what would you say to people who are considering it or who are aiming it? Let's say a teenager in a similar position to you were at your high school is listening to this. What would you say to them? I know that's a very long question with two parts, but there you go. Thank you.
Yes, in the first part of how many people, I would say not so many in mathematics. There are a few people. Maybe in Africa you'll find them who are professors of universities in Africa. But in working outside of Africa, there are very few. I know in the US professors who came from Ethiopia or Malawi who have excelled and in their own right. But they are not that many. So it takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hard work to be where one should be in terms of being sort of focused on research as well as teaching at the highest level. And this is quite sort of a very difficult sort of career. It's all, having said that, anyone with the potential, this is, you look at the potential. If you have the potential a mathematical ability or the reasoning ability, there's nothing that will stop you. So, as long as you can excel academically, do your studies as a young young adult person, I think it's just hard work, really. Studying, performing well, interactions with your teachers, listening. I think it's very important, and believing in your own abilities rather than thinking that people will say, "Oh, you're better at this, you're better at this." I think you have to discover what you are, who you are, and what you want in some sense. I traveled to many. I changed jobs so many, but because I was not satisfied with what I was having, and if you are not satisfied, move, find something else, and don't be afraid to be adventurous. I think it's also part of learning. And one thing I would say also, failing is not, failing is a part of being successful. As a researcher, I write grants almost every year, 3, 4, 5 grants, and I fail to get many of them. And but you don't stop. You continuously try to get better. Learn what's wrong with your writing. What's wrong with your proposals? Can you make them better? Can you learn from other people? Can you talk to mentors? Have mentors. I think it's important to have people who can sort of guide you. I've been lucky, Andy Wathen in Oxford and Philip Miney, they've played a very good role. Henwood in Zimbabwe, when I was in Zimbabwe, and Mark Roberts, they played also an important role in my development. And I was also inspired by, I'm really sorry, but I cannot remember their names. When I was in secondary school, we had 2 fellows from Cambridge. They were very young volunteers from Cambridge who were teaching us mathematics. I remember very well doing sort of surface calculus on surfaces, and this has stayed with me ever since. And so you have to have people you can look up to, and I hope my story will resonate with someone, and they can take inspiration from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very important, and I'm certain that anyone in that position would look at you and feel a huge amount of respect and excitement for their own prospects. There were so many positive and inspiring sentiments in that, and thoughts and advice. So thank you so much for that, Anotida. One thing just before we say goodbye that I know I should mention, which I presume that actually anyone was in the position you were when you were 12 or thereabouts would know about, is AIMS, or the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, which has bases across the continent and which does a tremendous job. It's a very, very, very good thing to look up. Does a good thing of encouraging talent and bringing it on across the entire African continent. So definitely look up AIMS if your story is anything similar to Anotida's. And again, Anotida, I've just loved every moment of speaking to you. So thank you very much for joining me. What does the rest of the day hold for you? I think you have an application which is very persistent. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. I'm working on this application. It's a tough one. I hope it's an open fellowship. It's one of these for the established sort of academicians, and it's quite challenging. But I'm looking forward to completing it. It's part of my job, I guess. Also part of building a research group, and that's important, I think. Since you mentioned AIMS, I was going to mention that also we have a program called Masamu program, which, unlike AIMS trains, brings people from Africa into their centers, either in Tanzania, South Africa, and so on. Masamu program, we visit you in your own country. So it's a program that has been running since 2010. It trains either master's, PhD students, early career faculty members in mathematics, in mathematical sciences, all disciplines of mathematics. So if you can Google search and look for Masamu program. Masamu, by the way, means mathematics in Swahili.
So is that MASSAMA?
So it's MASAMU.
Okay, Masamu.
Masamu.
Lovely.
So it's Masamu program. You can Google search and find it. We have been doing the programs for the last 10 years, now more than 10 years. It's also linked to a program that I'm running at the moment, which is called UK APASI, UK Africa Postgraduate Advanced Study Institute, that we are running with ICMS. So.
Wonderful. Yes, the International Centre of Mathematical Sciences in Edinburgh. I will put the link to Masamu in the show notes. And again, Anotida, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have you on again to hear more about these projects, because this 40 or so minutes we've had is nowhere near enough. But enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you once more, Professor Anotida Madzvamuse.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much.